Recorded. Hello, everybody. Today's Wednesday, June the 5th. I just welcomed the class. I want to just announce what I just mentioned earlier about this classes going forward. These are the ones that will be more hands-on based. So I think it's important that we record these lessons for your reference. The previous lessons were also important, but a lot of them were presentations that I read out from my Blackboard PDFs that I have given you already. So you can just go over those yourselves. You don't have to hear me speak. You can read yourself. So this is why going forward is going to be important, because there's no real step-by-step instructions with some of these lessons. This is why I want to do this, and wanted to mention that to you. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to look at Blackboard. If one of you can join the channel just to make sure you guys can see my stuff, I'll appreciate it. Calendar, here we go. So just a quick recap. Today we have the user persona due. So make sure you put the user persona in the actual class project. Okay, I'm gonna make sure there. Then in 2 weeks from now, we have the UI kit. So that one is going to be, I guess, partially, you're going to have an option to do it in Illustrator or Adobe XD, which is today I'm going to go over Adobe XD with us. So that one is due on the 19th. So you can see where everything is due on the calendar here. Right. Any other additional resources I'm going to mention to you and go over them just to make sure you're all clear with everything that's happening here. So we are on the user research and analysis module. This is class number 5. So over here, we have some interesting items to look at. Last week, we covered the UX structure. We also talked about the UI kit a bit, which today we're going to be using the applications for that. So this is the assignments, and I went over that last week. So for this next assignment, and this can tie in with your mobile projects that you'll be working with. Okay, now you probably don't even know what mobile app you'll be designing, but eventually you will be with your classmates. So this might help you towards that. If you don't use this UI kit, that's okay too, but it's good that to kind of put it in perspective. So you're going to be designing a rough layout model for a UI kit to support the design elements that will play a key role into the design production techniques applied to the mobile prototype project. The class exercise, which is today, should help you create this design along with the supported UI kit elements. This is the PDF right here. So you can see an actual, handout for this assignment. I did spruce it up a little bit from the last, well, not last one, maybe a few semesters ago. I did involve what's called a rough draft. So make sure that is included. That could be a sketch that you're going to create by hand, or it could be like a rough black and white model done in Illustrator or even Adobe XD. Okay, so that's the rough draft. I did show you some samples last week, but because we didn't record the lesson of the internet connection issues, I'm just going to type in. I think I actually downloaded some, to be honest with you, just to quickly check here. Right. So this is some of the stuff we found on the internet. This would be considered like a rough, like an actual wireframe or a rough sketch of a UI kit. Right here, you can see, right? This is a really, really good example, okay? And you don't have to be a great artist to do this. You can just have to be a little neat and precise and getting these UI kits drawn out on paper. Some people like to do this stuff in like a linear based approach. And I've seen rougher sketches than these, okay? It doesn't have to be this clean. Sometimes it could be like a sketch. think I have a sketch here somewhere. Right? And then that will result to something like this, okay? Like a nice, clean, eye candy type of design for a UI kit, okay? And as I mentioned last lesson, this is very, very important, especially for you being graphic designers, to put your design skills to accommodate these UI kits, buttons, and needs for user interfaces. Think about it. Everywhere you go these days, you see an interface, whether it's your cell phone, the bank machine, the kiosks, your car, your house. You watch Netflix, that's an interface right there. YouTube has an interface. Every digital platform that we use has a digital interface. So somebody has to design those things. And this is where you're going to be, kind of entering through that role, because it's very special to be able to be such an important contributor to these things. Okay. So this is what the UI kit will definitely inspire you, especially when you're doing graphic design at the same time, right? So I'm going to be covering this in depth today. So I'm going to be covering some elements and of course talk about why is it important. So the good draft, based on your rough draft, you will design a full rendered design which captures the color elements and interactive behavior states of your entire UI kit. Now, the interactive elements means what happens when you press the button. Does it change color? Does it highlight? Does it have like a drop shadow effect? Does the text change? Not necessarily the color of the background. So these are all things that we're going to be considering as you're designing these functions. Okay, and this is just a rough little example of this UI kit. And I'll show you some students examples as well. So here I listed some bullet points to aid you into considering some of the things that you might want to include. So things like at least 3 various buttons or navigation styles. These are the simple buttons, right? The ones that are kind of more on the main menu based. At least 3 various drop-down hamburger search menus. So think mobile, think website, kind of like in between, okay? At least 3 various sliders. And there's a slider right there in the middle. See, this is a slider right here. See, it's got like a little slider element. This might control the contrast or the brightness on your phone. It might control the volume, right? That's called a slider. Those are important too. It might fast forward the video track. If you're watching a YouTube video, it fast forwards the video segment, the timeline, right? So that's called a slider. To kick it up a little further with graphical implementation, I implemented a weather integrated widget or a map component. So a lot of these interfaces have either a weather or a map component. Those are the 2 most common ones. So you're going to design one of those. And lastly, you're going to put this all together in an Illustrator file, or you can produce me an Adobe XD file for submission. Okay, so I'm going to give you both options. Illustrator seems to be the more popular one because you're still learning kind of like the design aspect of it. However, I will start with XD today because I want to start doing Figma too. So I want to really crash all these programs with us. Okay, so these are the main elements I'm looking for. And this clearly demonstrates this example as well as the ones I just showed you. Let me just show you another one quickly here. Actually, keep this folder open. Right? Look, I mean, this will be a really perfect example of what I'm talking about. Right? So this has sliders, buttons, drop-down menus, on and off switches. This is a drop-down menu, right? There's a calendar. Okay, so what this doesn't have, it doesn't have like the weather widget, or it has a calendar widgets. The calendar widgets, of course, help you keep track of your schedules. Okay, so these are the widgets, but it has everything else that we're looking for. Okay, like on and off buttons, switches, progress bars, things like that. You don't have to do all of this, but I found this on the internet. It was kind of nice and consistent. The colors are consistent. It looks nice and clean. It's legible. Okay, it's pretty attractive. Again, approachable in terms of the user experience. It creates that nice, easy feel. Okay. Did I show you student examples? I did not. Okay, so why don't I show you also some students examples from last semester? Okay, what they did with this UX UI project. And that would be right here. So there's one. Okay. And when I'm talking about the weather, yeah, this wasn't the greatest with the weather, but there is a weather map right there on the bottom right corner. Okay. So it has all the buttons, has a little weather button here, but I was looking more like for like a weather widget, which I will show you a good example of. This has a weather widget on the side. I don't know about like I have an iPhone at home, like an iPad and iPhone. I know about you guys, but the weather widget is basically like this. This is a weather widget. Every phone has a weather. People want to know what the weather is like. The first thing you check is the weather, right? You know, that's very important. So that's why it's an important element of a UX UI type of design. So that's why the weather widget is a nice thing to have in this one. Another in addition to that is the map widget. So you're going to see a little combination of both. Okay, here's another project as well from a student. Okay. There's another one here. So we can get more graphical with elements and images and stuff. There's a map widget right down on the bottom right corner. That's called a map widget. And maps, yes, that's a very important one. Look, Uber, Google Maps, Uber Eats, everything's based on maps, right? Location, geographical, organized data. So that's pretty much what we're looking at here. Here's another one here. Okay, it's got the sliders, the buttons, the menus, the widgets. And a lot of these are done in Illustrator, okay? So this is the grayscale and the color model. Some of them gave me the grayscale separately, so you might not see the grayscale version. All of them gave me sketches. We were on the North Campus. We had a printer. I actually took out a stack of sheet of paper, and I gave it to the students and said, here, use this to draw your stuff. So some of them wanted to draw their weather widgets, and they gave me the hard copies. We don't have that option here. I got lots of paper if you want me to bring some, but you can honestly do it by hand, or you can just do it on an Illustrator in a wireframe format. Okay, with the rough draft. Okay, dark skin mode, night mode, light mode. Right. There's another one over here. The weather widget. Okay, the menu, the buttons, everything else. This group did pretty well, actually. I had a group of 34 people. It was a big section, right? Some of you might have met them last semester at the graduation show. So a lot of them were really, did a good job. They worked really hard. Okay. And the group projects were well done as well. It's hard to manage 30 plus people. It's easier if I have like 20 or so like you guys. But I mean, it was a good semester. So here's another one here, very graphical and colorful with all these features I mentioned, from the weather widget to the sliders, the buttons, the search menu, right? See, then this could be integrated into a real app. Could be a Sirius XM radio interface. Could be like some kind of a website or an app or something. There's another one here, a little video button. The weather app is in the bottom right corner. Oh, I knew I'm going to get here's a sketch that somebody gave me. I don't have too many of these examples, but this is one sketch that the student gave me. I think this was this one. This resulted to Sierra. Where's Sierra? I can't really remember, but if I find it, I'll let you know. So here's another one over here. Yeah. Notice how they're all consistent with their color schemes. I would not go past, three main colors. If you have to do a fourth or a fifth color, that's fine. But you want to keep it between one or two colors. Keep it consistent. So it's like a dual tone effect. Okay, as most have, as you can see, these interfaces here. And to show you what these look like in Illustrator, because I know you guys are good in Illustrator, and I give them an option. Go, look, I know you're learning XD for the first time. Learn it as a tool. We'll do some nice exercises in here. But if you're more comfortable with Illustrator, because you can open up Illustrator files into XD. You can just literally file save, file open, right? With Figma, you can't. You got to redesign the stuff from scratch. So that's one benefit about learning XD and using it as your prototyping user interface tool. So this is what Illustrator looks like. You see, when I zoom in, I can literally hit, outline mode, and preview mode, right? So I can see obviously that the students did a good job, and I can check their work, right? Because you're not gonna give me a picture of a JPEG that you did on the internet, obviously, right? This was an actual one that was used on the app. It's called Tree Me. So the students, I'm gonna do the same with you guys. I'll put you in groups, and you're gonna create an app idea. And this one was called Tree Me. It was about trees and how to find certain trees and stuff like that, I think. Well, let's read it. Let's see. Working in a conservation authority, there were so many different components to the tree and shrub ordering process that it could get quite confusing. People needed to decide what kind of planting they wanted to do, how big, if they wanted to do it by themselves or hire a contractor, if they qualified for the funding, etc. The goal for the Tree Me is to simplify the process. So it's about a very intriguing tree planting app. Okay. All right. So then there's another one over here. Some are more simple or minimalistic. Some are more nice. This was a nice one as well. This one here. You get the idea, right? And look, if you want to look for, oh, here's another example. So this is a grayscale. If you want to do this, if you want to do a grayscale version and give me like a full color version, that's fine too. It's kind of easier to do this than this if you're not into drawing. If you want to just keep it clean, I made that as an acceptable as well. So you can do like a rough grayscale version. This way you're not focusing on colors, right? Strictly different things here, and that's it there. There. And nonetheless, if you look up some other Google, ideas, go to Behance. It's a good Adobe community. A lot of designers showcase their portfolios on Behance. You might even do the same thing with your portfolio class. I don't know if Roberto's going to get you guys to do that, or I know you're doing other things, but it's another way to present your work. And a lot of people do have UI kits in their portfolios, so it's good for you to put this one in your portfolio um, arsenal. You're going to do another UI kit later for a desktop website, but that'll be more interactive and immersive. This is more like just a design UI kit. All right, so that's your next assignment. This is due in 2 weeks, so June 19th. Okay, so I'm giving you 2 weeks for this. And like I said, today I was late. I know I really got caught with traffic. When I'm not here, work on your stuff, right? Use the time wisely to get behind other projects, right? And I'll give you time in class, even if we finish earlier, for you guys to do some work to get this done. Okay. All right, so that's that. Very important. I'm glad we covered that segment. Now we're going to talk about what's this component stuff. This is just another example I put up here. You don't have to go this far with this, but yeah, you can see how, colorful and graphic this can get with images. Even you don't have to put images. I'm not looking for images, but if you want to put like this was like a sneaker app website, you can put little instruments to support your UI kit, whether it's clothing, sneakers, or something technical, right? So that was just another example here, and this was a screenshot of another UI kit. I mean, just to kind of give you a more fundamental. This was a student project from before, like a long time ago, and I wanted to upload this to show you, because I know you might not watch the video. This is online, so you can see an example of a UI kit. So if you forget, like, what was that slider thing he was talking about? Well, you can always look for this for reference, okay? So this has an actual, so everything is here under class 5 if you're looking for examples for this UI kit, okay? So now we're going to talk about defining the skeleton. Okay, and this definitely coincides with everything that we're doing so far. And this captures the 4th plane of the UX strategy essential presentation that we're teaching here in this course. So far, we covered the strategy, the scope, the structure was last week. Today's going to be the skeleton. And next week or the week after, we'll talk about the surface. And that'll kind of finish this UX course combined with this UI course in this module. Okay. So we're going to talk about that right now. I'm going to cover this here. And just to kind of fast forward things for next week, I did make this visible for you. We're going to talk about wireframes and wires. I do have a lot of wireframes to share with you. And the wireframes is how we're going to start building and designing these prototypes. So basically, we're going to create a basic app with a loading screen and an animation and going to the next page and doing all the interactive stuff here. So that's going to be happening next semester. Basically, things will get more interesting going forward in this class. Okay, the first 3-4 weeks, not to call them boring, but they're a lot more like theoretical. I do a lot of talking and explaining things and reading off my handouts that I created for you. But now as we progress forward, I kind of elevate my practical stuff. So we're going to do a lot more hands-on stuff as well. Okay, so it's not just going to be me talking here the whole couple of hours or so. Okay, it's going to be you guys doing work with me together, just like we did in the previous courses. All right. So we're going to talk about that next week when I get there with class 6. For now, let me read off this one slide and then we'll start the hands-on stuff as well today. Okay, let me see if I downloaded this one. It's good. Making sure my recording is on here. Right. So skeleton and user interface design. This is the 4th module or plane of the whole UX Essential Strategy Guide. That's pretty much the rule of thumb for any user experience design. So the skeleton basically is defining it in terms of function given form, and it's got a nice picture of a human skeleton because everything's interconnected, right? From your finger to your elbow to your joints, your whole body's connected in a skeleton. This is how you got to think when it comes to the strategy of UX design. Everything is connected to something, okay? And that's why the anatomy picture is there as a starting point. And then there's obviously more features and specs of everything. How many bones are in a human body? I don't know this, by the way. I know it's in the thousands, right? It's in the thousands, right? One way to answer this, right? Let's do it. I'm just curious. I know. How many bones in a human body? Oh, 206. I thought it was thousands. Never mind. 206 bones, okay? There we go. We're not going to name them all either. Okay, so next. The skeleton plane focuses on concrete issues of presentation. What form will the product take? How will users move around and do things? How will content be presented and manipulated? The skeleton plane is created through interface design. Okay, this is why we're talking about this, the UI kit and everything that goes in hand with everything that we're doing, which provides users with the ability to do things. Now, let me just quickly back it up a bit. We're talking about structure, scope, strategy. The user personas that you're doing today is very important because that defines your whole user research, okay? Who are you building the app for? Who's the audience? How will it benefit them? These are all important things. So now we're talking about more like implementing the actual function of the skeleton, okay? So interface design, basically. Our work on the skeleton plane has to enable several key principles of positive user experience. Okay. So another person looking at a screen could be a device or a monitor or a computer like you're looking at right now. So these are the core important things you have to remember. Rapidly establish value in the user's mind. Lead user toward continuing the experience. Introduce specific content at the most relevant, most appropriate points in the experience. Add immediate value with each click or tap. Add positively to the overall experience over time with each interaction. So I can't emphasize how important all these things are when you're creating these apps or websites, right? Every click has to pretty much bring the next value to the user. It's like now we have these, it's like the dopamine in your brain, right? That's why people addicted to, remember Candy Crush? Remember these other games? People got addicted to that stuff, right? Because it's like a hit of dopamine when you click the button, you collect those chests and the icons and stuff, right? So people got hooked on that stuff. Even other games, I don't know. I haven't been up to my gaming stuff lately, but from now and then I do my user experience research and I do see some of the games. I have a golf game I like to play. It's called Golf Clash. You guys are any golf clashers here? Right? It's pretty interesting because the game is based on physics and it's got a beautiful interface design and it's got a good thing in terms of collection of data and integrating with other users. I play real people. So if I'm playing on the weekend, it's a tournament, you're playing real people, not computer. So it's real people playing this game. Like it's like it's like an online thing, I guess. So I found that to be very interesting. And I like golf. Features versus usability, right? The number of function available on screen has a direct effect on how useful the product is. The more function shown, the less useful they are. And you can see here how few features, uh, poor visibility, and many features, good visibility. This is all pretty much all here. So it's like a scale of, from top to bottom, how this is all affecting the actual overall experience. Habit and reflex account for much of our daily interactions. Our ability to do anything depends on the accumulation of reflexes, most of which are pretty small. Convention is what allows us to use these reflexes. Convention often match our expectation of what something is supposed to do or be like. Does that make sense? So these icons here are a perfect example of what I just said. We're so like trained right now with our minds to know what the little hourglass means, like the actual the search menu on Google or the search on a website. It's automatic. You don't have to reinvent it or make something different, right? The trash can is another one. We all know if you hit the trash can, you delete something. Doesn't matter if you're on a server, using Amazon Web Services or GoDaddy website or an email account. Everything has the same symbol icon because it's universal. So these are the universal laws that we're kind of using right now because that's what convention is. The only time you should deviate from a well-established convention is when there's a clear, obvious benefit of doing so. And this was what's that? Do you guys know? Left and right? Yeah, but what's cellular? This is my iOS and the iPhone versus Android. So they're all kind of different, but they're all very similar at the same time. This is an older screen capture, by the way. Right now, they're not that much different, but they're pretty similar. So iPhone, Android. Although the functionality of an app or site is important, the form used to deliver the functionality is equally important. Organization of content, layout of the screen, using audio and video, how people use their hands and fingers to move through data. Remember last week we talked about left-handed users, right? Versus right-handed users. These are all important things. No matter how technically superior the code is, um, or how deep its functionality, the bottom line is an, an app or site whose interface is difficult to use won't be used. I know a lot of failure websites that met the same demise. They were so complex that people just won't use it because they don't make sense, right? The successful companies or websites or apps are the ones that are easy to use. So people prefer, you don't want to think too hard when you're using something. You want to be able to just go through it intuitively, right? So here's a few ground rules. To most people, the UI is the system. Okay, the user interface is the actual system to most people. So what they see is what they kind of go with. And I know the back end is also important, but not people don't understand how the back end works. They only see the front end. They only see the user interface, which your primary role is to make that thing happen. A well-designed user interface allows people to start using it immediately with or little no help. UI design has to be audience appropriate. Just because you understand it doesn't mean someone else will. That's why testing is the key. Want to tell students you build an app or a website, try it with your friends first. Let's see if they can figure it out. If you see them struggle, like what happens now, where do I go? Obviously, you have to reconsider some of those features. Here's the most important point here. Inappropriate UI design is the #1 killer, okay, of great product ideas. You can have a great product. If the website sucks, no one's going to purchase your product, right? That's pretty much what it comes down to. It's better to perfectly meet the needs of the critical few than to poorly meet the needs of many. That's a famous quote. Labels, instructions, and icons and images set expectations about, and this is something we touched on last week a little bit, so I'm just kind of following it up with this lesson. What to do, like give people a little tutorial, like, like click here to win the prize. They tell you that a lot on these apps or something. They tell you what to do, labels, instructions. What will happen? Open this, drag it over here, move it over there, right? Where the user will go, foster a sense of place. How will the screen respond? Do X and Y will happen? Okay, so these are all important little takeaways. Usability improves when similar parts are expressed in similar ways. This functional consistency leverages existing knowledge, familiar meaning and action, navigational reference points, simplified usability, and increased intuitive learning. So these are all the most important psychological things you will be in charge of. Again, familiar meaning and action, navigational reference points, simplified usability, and increased intuitive learning. So these are the functional consistency leverages. And I don't have to tell you this by now. It used to be, when I used to teach this class, it was called, what did we call this class a long time ago? Well, we did multimedia design, I remember. And interface design was part of it. We're making interfaces in Flash for websites. We didn't have smartphones back then. So all we're focusing on is how these websites will look like on the computer. Now the rules have changed. We got tablets, cell phones, computers. We're going to make sure our product goes across all three. That's why when you're making websites, you're making them responsive, right? And not just for one media, but three. You got tablets, cell phones, or mobile smartphones, and you have desktops as well. And they switch from time to time. In the past 5 years, maybe a little more, I didn't see that much drastic change in all these three. 5 years ago, they could have been, the sizes might be off a bit. But right now, nothing's changed in the past 5 years, okay, that I've seen. Nothing drastic. Maybe some of the framing languages that's being taught in HTML and stuff, like Flexbox and that kind of stuff, but that's Felicia's territory. Core principles, progressive disclosure. Progressive disclosure means that everything should progress naturally from simple to complex. It means only the necessary or requested information is displayed at the given time. Again, only when people want to click on, like, want to say find out more, then you got that disclaimer that shows up, right? That's when people look at that, deep stuff, okay? You don't have to necessarily throw it in someone's face. So be very smart about that, right? Make the complex stuff come out after people ask for it. This helps people manage complexity without becoming confused, frustrated, or disoriented. That's the last thing you want to do, is make people, confused when they look at something. So buttons, navigation, all this infrastructure system that we're going to be learning is very important. And the UI kit is a huge thing. Information presented to a person who isn't interested in it or isn't ready to process it, it's noise. Think of you looking at something that you don't like. You totally ignore it. Your brain will totally disregard it, right? Because you didn't ask for that. Why is it in front of you, right? So kind of put yourself in their shoes. Remember, intuitive really means single trial learning. We learn behaviors from experiences across the web, devices, and from real world places and objects. Interactions should be easy to learn, which makes them easy to remember. Ideally, use it once, learn it rapidly, remember it forever. But realistically, the way it works is you use it a few times, learn it, and you hopefully remember it. And put yourself You have any new apps you guys downloaded lately? Any new apps or games or anything? Well, did it take you 2 or 3 times to remember the steps? Or is it the first time you use something? How about Blackboard? When you first started with Humber College, did it take a while for you to get used to Blackboard? Right? That was a little bit of a learning curve, right? And trust me, I'm a big critic of Blackboard. I think they can improve a lot of different interface things. But again, they're doing it through a third party operator, and they have another platform. They have too many platforms integrated. Most schools I know, I've taught from many institutions, I see a similar problem. They have 3 different websites. One for students, one for staff, one for community groups and stuff. There's so many things happening. This is a good example for the weather widget. And this is about the core principles of this. For this is in intuitiveness, okay? And this is context and hierarchy, very important. So just look at this for a second. Are items that are functionally or logically connected grouped together visually? Yes. Is the information presented in order of importance to the user? I'll repeat it again. Is the information on the screen presented in order of importance to the user? What do you think? Yes or no? How so? Yeah, degrees or Celsius, the weather is, right? That's the first thing. How warm is it outside? Is it snowing? Is it cold? Should I wear a jacket or can I wear like short sleeve like I'm wearing today, basically, right? So that's the first thing you want to know. Is it going to snow? Is it going to rain? Right? And then you want to find out how about later today? And this is the shows you the timeline of the weather, how it's going to be later in the afternoon, the evening of the day of. And then you might want to know what the weather is going to be like tomorrow or the next day or the next day. So that information is condensed further down on the bottom in a vertical form. You see how very strategic this interface is built of this UI for this weather widget. These are the things that this is talking about. The most important thing should stand out first. This is called hierarchy, okay? So context and hierarchy, very important, especially when you're building these things, right? So does the visual hierarchy on the screen of the functional behavior match what the user expects to do first, second, or third? Is the visual layout consistent with the mental model or the person that's using it? Here's another complex example of the same stuff we're talking about it. This is for like, I think this looks like a medication ordering process portal. Okay. So this is very complicated. You have a lot of different medication, let's say, people that are taking medication. You have different categories of the medication, different hospital services, number of physicians in the area. So it's a more complex interface. And look how it's organized. It's got the blue tabs, the colors in the middle, the dividers. Okay. It's got nice layout in columns. It's using a table structure. Tables are the most easiest way to build these things, right? Rows and columns, basically. And same rules apply. If you look at those points on the right, you ask yourself, are the items, logically connected, grouped visually together? Yes. Is information presented in order of importance to the user? Yes. So first they have their medication, then they have the hospital services, and then they have the physicians in the area that they might be looking for. So all this information is properly organized, laid out, and presented by whatever complexity it may be, whether it's the weather or medication for someone, right? Doesn't matter what it is. You have to be able to present this properly. Okay, here's another one. You guys use Waze? I don't mind Waze, but sometimes all these little chat bubbles on the screen. I just like Google Maps. Sometimes it's simpler, and then even that gets a little clustered. But that's what happens when you have too many things happening at the same time. Like, it's all cluster, and this is annoying, right? So Hicks' law posits that every additional choice increases the time required to make a decision. The more choices you give people, the easier it is to choose nothing. The more choices you give people, the easier it is to choose nothing. It's not information overload, it's filter failure. And this is exactly an example of that. How the heck are you going to use this app with all those bubbles. You gotta pinch, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in to see exactly what the crossroads are. I tell this to my students too. When you meet a client and they ask for a logo to be designed, don't be a hero and design 10 different logos and say, here, which one do you like? Don't do that. Okay? What you do is you make 2 or 3, maybe 3. Here, because you have no idea what they want, right? Like you want this, or that. Don't do 10, do 3 or 2. And then they're like, I want this one. And then from that one, you take it further. Okay, what do you like about it? Then you may change the color, change the font, change the style, change the, the whatever it is, the simplicity. And then you take it from there. Then all of a sudden you do revision 1, revision 2, final approval, job's done. Okay? You're not going to show them 10 logos because they'll be like, I want this one, this one, and that one. Now you got to work with 4 concepts, right? So you got to be careful with that, right? That goes for any design, not just logo. Logo is just an example. All right, so that was that skeleton thing. We got one more of these little presentations I got to do. Maybe next week or the week after, and this will wrap up the UX segment of us learning the behavioral methods of users and everything else that's part of this. All right, so right now, let's go to, first we'll do Illustrator. And from Illustrator, we'll open up XD. Hands up if you have XD installed in your computer systems. Perfect. Excellent. So let's go Illustrator first. Create a new file. How big will this new file be? You can go to the web option here. I like to use what's called the minimum size, because honestly, 1024 by 768 is a pretty good size for an interface design screen. Okay, you don't have to go bigger than that. If you want, you can, but this is a good one to start with. 1024 by 768, which also, if you know, that happens to be 10 by 14 inches on a legal size paper. Some people want to print this stuff and put in their portfolios. So 10 by 14 is a pretty big format, which is 1024 by 768. So let's go ahead and do that. Landscape. Okay, so this is where you can create your user or UI kit for the mobile app. I know you never got taught this stuff in other classes that you've been taking, because I'm teaching you something very special and specific. I want to cover some of the fundamentals of what you might want to know how to do in Illustrator. Photoshop, it kind of goes in hand together. You don't. I like to not use Photoshop for this. Okay, I mean, you can for some of the graphics and textures, but Illustrator is your go-to tool for the items. It's probably easier. Speaking of look at these widgets on the Apple on my screen. So all these widgets, they're all made using like a UI kit of some sort as well. Okay, just thought I want to point that out. Let's make a simple button, okay? And I'm gonna copy this scheme right here. I'm gonna copy this just so I have a reference point to go by. I'm gonna use this one here, for example. Because although I like Figma and I like XD with this stuff, it lacks some of the Illustrator techniques. You know what I mean? The stuff you can do in Illustrator is way beyond with some of the some of the gradients, for example. Okay, you have a more of a gradient style. You have not to use the mesh tool, but if you do use more advanced Illustrator features, I mean, no program in the world can compete with Illustrator and Photoshop. Okay, so this is why I like Illustrator to be as a tool for you if you can utilize it, right? So I'm just going to move this here for a second, just as a reference point. So if you want to use one of these buttons, let's just make one of these quickly in Illustrator. Okay. I'm going to lock this right here. Command L. Command 2 actually is lock. And I'll save this as my, this is only for me to kind of reference this for you. This is an exercise. It's not really a UI kit. So I'll save this onto the desktop. Okay. So first thing is, let's just make a simple button here, right? And with this button, we're going to introduce a gradients. You don't have to use gradients for the buttons, but if you want to use a simple, kind of like a sleek looking style, then you want to definitely control the gradient tool right here. Now, the gradient tool has changed a lot in Illustrator over the years. It has a gradient annotator, which you can control at any given time. Like this, as you know already, you can move it around, right? You can use other gradient options as well. You can also round the corners on the button, as you know already. I mean, you know most of this stuff already, right? I'm gonna zoom in here. This is like a nice grayscale looking button. I don't know if you can see my colors here, but they're quite simple. Now, here's the most common trick that most people like to use when they do like the invert button. So first, let's look at the gradient styles, because I know you know most of these anyways. Linear, radial. You do have this other one. This is the free transform gradients. This one you can really, have you guys know this one? Do you know this third one? This is new. It's called free form gradient. This one you can literally like control where the anchor points are. This might be very useful for this UI kit if you want to get these little fancy buttons and stuff to show up, because you can definitely control and expand these additional colors. And yes, to make new ones, you can basically click to make new ones, and to delete them, look, you drag them outside, right? And to keep them inside, you do this kind of stuff. So they're not bad, right? These new features that you have in Illustrator. And yeah, to change the color, look, you simply double click. You can pick any color of your choice. So let's say I'll go with this blue, right? This light blue. I'll go with like dark blue over here. Double click, you can change any color of your choice to control the gradient. To control the size, you grab the little bottom circle, you can increase the actual spread. The spread goes up to 100. It doesn't go past that, but you can do quite a bit with the 100 spread by all means. You can have this nice little conical buttons like that. So just to kind of introduce some of the newer features, I don't recommend the mesh tool. You guys know the mesh tool? Don't use the mesh tool because it doesn't translate well when it comes to XD. It'll rasterize it. It'll make it an image. Gradients are easy to understand. And I'll show you later what I mean by this, by copying and pasting. So don't get too complex, because then Illustrator only understands gradient mesh. No other program has gradient mesh tool but Illustrator, right? That's why. Even this one's iffy too. So be careful with this new gradient too, because this one might also give you the same problem. So I would just keep it simple, to be honest with you. Here, let me do this one more time. I'll just give it a linear gradient, okay? Very simple. I'm gonna just control the gradient this way from angle to angle. To change the color, again, you double click on this little white swatch. I'm gonna make this like a light blue, and this black swatch here, I'm gonna make it like a darker blue. Okay. If you want to pick a custom color, you can definitely do that as well. You can also pick a color existing from the page. Okay, you can definitely navigate about that. Now, once you have one color selected, right, you can do two things. The famous way we used to do it back in older days is double click on the scale tool. Look, this is called the scale tool, everybody. If I double click on the scale tool, I'm going to open up this dialog box right here. This will tell me, what do you want to do? Scale a uniform version of the same object. I'm going to scale it. Watch this. 80%. 80 is smaller than 100, right? So 80% copy. And I'm scaling corners, strokes, and effects. And look when I was going to press the copy button, it scales the same thing, 80% from the inside. This way you don't have to manually resize, drag, position, center, align. It saves you 4 or 5 steps. So that's why these advanced features in Illustrator might help you with this stuff that you're doing. And then what you do is you go to the gradient tool and you swipe it the other way, and all of a sudden you have this, button looking shape, right? From a simple little 1-2 step, right? I'll do it one more time. I'll do it with the circle, because this can go a long way with other buttons you might, because this might be a slider or something on your interface you can design, right? And all it took was 2 objects reversed with the gradient flow. Let me do a circle version here. I'll do it one more time if I went too fast. So I'll do a circle. So here's again, this is a linear. I can do even a radial gradient. This one's also good. I like the radial gradients. Looks like more like it's popping out like this. So watch this, same thing. Ready? You can also do this. You double click on the scale tool. So you select the object, double click on the scale tool, and I'm gonna do, I guess I do 80% again. 80% uniform scale. Non-uniform means you can do X and Y, horizontal, vertical. Uniform means uniform, like everything was scaled. You want to scale the strokes and effects. What does that mean? That means if you have a drop shadow or a corner radius, it'll scale that in consistency with the ratio, which is 80%. If you're not sure, you can hit the preview button. Look at this, preview on and off. I do this quite a bit. Look at this. I hit the preview button. It shows you exactly what you're getting. Now here's the tricky part. You don't press OK. You press copy. Copy means duplicate it, right? And if you press Command D, look at this. Command D, Command D, Command D keeps duplicating it. Not that you want to do that, because now you have like a Looney Tunes adventure thing happening, right? So don't do no step and repeat, but it works in case you do want to create something very different. So I'm just gonna undo it to this point, and then I'm just gonna swipe it the other way. I'll go with the gradient tool and just hit it that way. So it's kind of more like this button over here, right? So there's another button idea. This is a radial, and that one's a linear gradient. So then you can just grab these two, group them together, and this might become a big, because this UI kit, honestly, all you do later is you duplicate. Look, 1, 2, 3. You can duplicate certain buttons and then change the gradients on these to reflect what it is that you're trying to do. So this is basically facing this way. Press up, press down, let's say, right? I can make this one brighter and darker just to show you some variations that you can definitely include. Right? Yes, you can also use text fields. The text fields are very practical on your UI kit. And yes, you want to center these, center all the time, right? How do you center again? You select them all, make sure you distribute them properly. I'm going to make these bold. Okay, so they stand out. Right? So these are different things you can do with your UI kit to produce different variations, like on and off, like a switch, right? Or a deprecated button, a rollover button, things like that, right? Just kind of keep that off there, right? This might be part of a slider, right? So this might be part of your image slider. That, remember I mentioned those image sliders that you might have to do. That's kind of this here. So, just to kind of show you, I'm going to create a linear element here, increase the stroke to maybe like 3 or so. Make it a grayscale stroke, right? Bring this to the very front. If I go closely, right? So this now became a slider, right? This little element here. And if I option drag it, watch this, 1, 2, 3, I can have different sliding option components that can be part of my UI kit, right? So just by, it's so much easier in Illustrator to make this thing, right, come up. And the benefit of Illustrator also is you can basically take it to Adobe XD just by saving it and opening it and making it interactive, okay, making it a real button, as we will do in the future. We're going to make these things come to life. So this is like the basics, okay? The basics of using, the knowledge that you already have and converting it into something that you can create in Illustrator and make up your whole, interface UI kit. And this alone can play a role with everything that you see here. Everything that you see here can be done using the same method I just showed you, whether it's changing colors, opacity, gradients, arrows, buttons, on and off switches, things like that. The only thing is that I haven't, like, maybe notice here this drop shadow here. To do the drop shadows, they take a little bit of work. I'll be honest with you. Let me make 2 other variations here. I'll make 2 more buttons from these 2. If the buttons are maybe not as not as bright, okay? They're too light or too minimalistic. You can enhance them with drop shadow features. I'm just gonna see if there's a new feature here. What's this one here? Not the dimension. There's a new tool that I played around with in Illustrator. Just got released too. Not the blend tool. Anyways, I'll show you another time if I remember correctly. For now, just gonna change the color though. I'm just gonna change this to. Look, by the way, I don't know if you know this, you probably do. Swatch libraries. Like, why make something from scratch when you have things to help you? And you have, look at this, gradients, okay? Metals, neutrals, pastels, seasons, skin tones, sky, spectrums. I like to use, let's use gems and jewels for now, right? So look at these gems and jewel gradients. And of course, I'll make them bigger by simply going to large thumbnail view. So if I want to make something, from this and just integrate it with my design here, I'm just going to use more like the subtle gradients. Maybe this one here. Right. Just change the color of that one. Just going to use this as an example here. Okay. So I'm using my default gradients. But if you notice this type of style that I chose, it's very hard to distinguish on the white canvas or any background design. So I'm going to show you how these drop shadows work in Illustrator in case you're not familiar with it. And yes, I can reposition this. I'll leave it in the middle. So here's what you do. You select not the whole thing, because this is grouped into 2 objects. You can ungroup, or you can just select the one at the back. Let's call this the base. This is the base. This base here, I'm going to go to Effects. Now watch here carefully. This is your Illustrator effects. This is your Photoshop effects. Do not confuse the 2. Because yes, you can perform Photoshop effects in Illustrator. Why? Just to save you time to go from one application to another. It's like a quick thing. But if you go to Illustrator effects and you go to stylize, drop shadow, or feather, these are very popular things that you can't do in XD or Figma, right? Actually, there's a drop shadow effect in them, but not some of the other ones. They're a little, basically, they have more control here. So if you want to do a drop shadow, for example, you can do a drop shadow. You can drop this down to maybe 2 pixels. And the blur could be maybe 5 pixels. and the opacity 35 pixels, right? So by you doing this right now, you have this drop shadow effect, nice and smooth drop shadow that might do a key role into playing into your interface design, just in case you want to get fancy with some of these effects. Because you see some of this drop shadow stuff exists on the menus and thing, and you could definitely apply that on your buttons. Okay, so if you want to get a little extra, you want to put some of these effects in there. Yes, that's fine. Drop shadows are fine. I see them more now with some of the UI kits, right? I don't strongly recommend it, but this interface is implementing it quite a bit. So I wanted to show you that as well. So keep an eye out for these default gradients, default color swatches. There's so many defaults you can use, right? You're not reinventing the wheel here. You can might as well use what can help you. Here's another trick. Ready for this one? Icons. How do you get your icons? I'm looking for a globe icon, like a World Wide Web icon. What am I going to go and get it? On the internet? Symbols, yeah. So symbols, symbol libraries, right? And there is something called, look at this, web icons or web buttons and bars. This is like, a lot of people don't know this. And you know what's funny about this? This hasn't changed since 2003. This hasn't changed since 2003, probably before that even. How do I know that? Because that's how old I've been using these programs for, so I remember. Don't forget, we did we did the same things doing this in Flash and Photoshop, making websites and other programs. So watch this. Let's make this next button. There's a next button, okay? Play, previous, play, rewind. Now, I'm not saying for you to use these buttons, but as a learning tool to see how the eye candy is coming back, mostly with games and stuff, right? Websites are not going to use these buttons, but Apple's website was built like this. Let me show you. Here's the tabs. Look, this was Apple's website. So do you guys remember the tabs? Right? So this was the website using different tabs. So you click on the tab, and then the tab became, let's say, darker. Oh, those are and the the glass buttons, right? So how would you do this in Illustrator? Because I want you to learn how to break this apart. So how do you do this button? Let's say you want to make a game, like a video, like you want to make a little button, fancy button for a game, like click here to enter or something. So if you go up here, break link means basically break this into as many objects as it needed to be to make it happen. So obviously this is a gradient with a stroke. That's all this is on top of another element behind it. Let me bring this over here so I can show you. So break link is how you would see how this was done. This is a gradient, and this is an object. So that's how this was done. This is using normal. This is screen. So this is using a screen effect. Look, screen or normal. But if you use screen, it's going to make it look like it's highlighting the button. So it's like a nice highlight color, right? So it's like the eye candy that you see. You can make this stuff in Illustrator quite easily. I know in Photoshop we use different blend modes. Remember in Photoshop we use screen, darken, lighten stuff. Illustrator is the same thing, but with objects, and you can really utilize the technique to help you build better UI kit for buttons and stuff. If you need to get fancy like this, and so is this one. Look, this one is also screen. Look at this, an extra element of the shiny reflecting area, right? So in case you're wondering how to make these fancy buttons, 3 objects, 2 of them on screen with the gradient, one's the background. That's it. So 1, 2, 3. And you can investigate any one of these and break them up. Let's break this one. Look, break link. What's this one? Look, another gradient. Oh, this is a triangle, normal. This also needs to be ungrouped. Look at this, another screen, a grayscale gradient on top of the orange color gives you a nice screen. What's this? This is another screen, right? And this is just a gradient in the background, right? So a combination of three objects, you can make this glass eye candy effect if you need to do something like that. Because some of these UI kits, like web widgets and stuff, do require you to make some of these advanced things. And did you know also Illustrator has an animation feature? You see this little loading bar down there? Look, it actually spins. I'm pressing Command D, Command D. That was a joke, by the way. Just give you guys a little sense of humor. Step and repeat. Okay, so basically that's what I want to show you is how these things are here. If you want to use them for whatever learning purposes, I know I memorize all these, so don't put them in your UI kit. I mean, you can get creative if you want, but honestly, you can do a lot better, especially now. This is like 20 years old, this UI kit, right? So I'm sure you can make a better one. But there's one more, and this might help you because this has the basic icons from 20 years ago that are used today. Which ones are those? Well, not this one. This one's definitely obsolete. Call me on my cell phone. No. Right? It's a smartphone now, but back then that's what the phones used to look like, right? Now it's like, the phone icon is more like a rectangle with a thing on it. What else is, yeah, this one hasn't changed, the volume, right? It's still the same. Volume is volume, right? These are universal symbols that you can use. So if you want to use these, I don't mind. Okay. Look, this one here, under maintenance, okay, or settings, right? Where's the setting? Look, the clock, the timer. These are still very, very useful, right? Look, the gaming hasn't changed, right? The credit card payment processing thing, if you want to use it, look, shopping cart, okay? Like these are all things you can still use today. The home button, right? Not that you can use that one there. So yeah, basically you can utilize some of these. Look, the RSS symbol, right? Oh yeah, and how do you change the color of these? How do you use them? Because I want to make it, let's say, purple. How do I do that? Break the link. If you break the link, the symbol is yours to have. Just in case you will import symbols from the internet and you can't edit them, you got to break the link, and now you can change it to any color of your choice. Okay? So remember some of these tools and techniques that an Illustrator would be hands down one of my favorite tools for this stuff. All right, so web icons, default gradients. If you want to find those useful for this particular assignment, I don't mind if it helps you. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this right now. This was just like a good little array of different examples for me to kind of help you with putting things in perspective here. I'm going to save this as a UI kit exercise. Right? Okay, so now look at this. I want to open this into XD. Okay. So did you know I can right click and open it with XD directly from the Illustrator file? You can also open up XD and open the file too. I haven't opened up XD since the last. I might have to update the version. I'm not sure. So let's hope that's not going to be affecting my file here. Great. So here's XD, ladies and gentlemen, right? I opened up my Illustrator file directly into XD. That's why I like XD about this. I also like XD as an app. It's a pretty easy learning prototyping tool. But Figma, as you know, it's kind of taking the helm. It's on the leaderboard. So this is why we're switching to Figma. I did that since last semester. So from last semester, I made the decision. Even I spoke with Felicia and some other colleagues of mine about the switch, and we switched it to Figma eventually, but not to discount XD. It's still an Adobe tool. I still see a few people use it. It comes down to using tools. The more tools you know, the better, right? So if you don't know XD, and if I can throw you one or two classes, which is today and next week, I'll do XD, and that's it. After that, we'll go right into Figma. At least you have a little bit of knowledge of XD. You're not going to be totally, not understanding how it works. And it's an easy transition. Once you learn this XD, Figma is not much different. Okay, it's just the interface is a little different and the functions are different, which we're going to get into. Okay, that's why I'm going to make sure I distribute my time wisely when I'm teaching you this stuff. So this is what it looks like now in XD. Look at this now. They grouped this for me for some reason, right? But if I go to ungroup again, yeah, isn't that cool? So I was able to ungroup this. So yes, look at this. It's still a vector file, and I can still change the colors in XD. So it's totally communicatable with Illustrator. Again, a really important thing. So if you want to take Illustrator to XD, you can. Gradients, yeah, that too. Choose gradients. Look at the fill. It's a gradient fill. What it won't do is some of the more advanced overlay effects. I don't think it has overlay effects. Maybe it does actually. Normal. Yeah, it has darken, multiply. It does have overlay effects. Okay. I just didn't think it would understand them from Illustrator. But if it doesn't, you can always reset them here to change the different blend modes. Okay. You can do that here too. And don't worry, I'm going to go over the interface. I'm going to give you a crash course in XD soon. So I'm not just popping all over the place. I'm going to actually start with the whole thing momentarily. Okay. But in a nutshell, yes, you can bring in Illustrator to XD back and forth. Okay. And what about this? What do you think of this? Is that going to be a vector file? That was never a vector file to begin with. That was a screen capture from a JPEG. So obviously that's not going to be vector. This is an image. You can't do anything on an image. It is an image. But if you make it in Illustrator, it's a vector file. You can actually edit it, modify it, use it. But this images off the internet, JPEGs, that won't work. So those are things you want to remember. Okay, so now I'm going to close this one down. And here we are with Adobe XD. I want you all to open the program. Do you want to grab a quick break first before we continue? Or you're okay? Break? Okay. So this way I'm going to have two segments to the video. This is being recorded, so I'm going to stop the first segment. I'll record the second segment. I have two videos to share with you today, so I'm going to do that momentarily. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video, and I'll see you in a moment.